I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, Olympia, Washington, once again tries to prove it is the wokest city in all the land. Plus, Spokane, Washington wants to ban federal immigration agents from carrying out enforcement activities in local parks. And a religious college hosts a queer prom complete with HIV testing for 14-year-olds. That and much more coming up today on You Gotta Laugh. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can and should support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and clicking on the banner that says support the show for $5. Hello, and welcome to Undivided. Welcome to our little show. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a come back. I'm Brandi Kruse. There's reparations, and then there's whatever the hell Olympia, Washington is doing. As we've learned with the city of Olympia, if progressives do this much, Olympia has to do 10 times more. They have to prove that they are the wokest, the most righteous, the most ideologically driven. So you see all these nutso things happen in Olympia, but unfortunately, one of the consequences of that is whenever there's an uber progressive policy or action that a city in Washington state might undertake, then you start to see it go elsewhere, and then you start to see it go into the state house in Olympia, and then all of a sudden they pass laws that the rest of us have to live by, and then Washington State or Oregon or California passes a law, and then Democrats on the other side of the country start to look at it and say, oh, that's a very cool idea. We should try that here. And then before we know it, the entire country is in the gutter. So let's break down what's happening in Olympia, Washington, to see if we can prevent it from happening elsewhere. So as always, whenever an idea pops into a public servant's mind, they have to study it, and they have to use your money to study it. So the city of Olympia spent a bunch of money commissioning a study on how they could make right the wrongs of the past against African Americans in this country. So, of course, the obvious answer that you would hear from progressives is reparations. You know, let's pay people back for the harm that was done to them all those long years ago that taxpayers today had nothing in the world to do with. But that's sort of the base level of what progressives want to do. And we already know that in Washington state, they passed a statewide reparations program that new home buyers are paying into here as we speak. But Olympia wants to do more. They have to do more. So they do this research and they present this long list of potential ideas where not only when it comes to home ownership, but when it comes to every facet of society, how to push people, white people or other, Asians, you can't help Asians at all either, push them down and try to lift the right people of color up. So I got to go through, there's a lot of detail here, but it's absolutely insane. The long list of just racist ideas that the city of Olympia is pushing forth as a way to help the Black community. So I'm going to go through them topic by topic, but let's start with housing, right? Because that seems to be where everyone starts. Housing and land ownership. So they've got a long list, we just have a few of them here, of things that they're suggesting they could push forward or fund with taxpayer money specifically to help Black people. Remember, specifically to help Black people and no one else. So allocate $1.25 million to affordable housing preservation and to be able to make sure they have money for home repairs and down payment assistance, housing choice vouchers to pay for their mortgages, create a land acquisition program for future development, create a new dollar lot program where parcels of reparations land are set aside for a bid process for aspiring Black homeowners. Okay. Provide support for owners of heirs of property and help families build generational wealth. Provide mortgage and public rent relief. Create a loan pool, assist existing homeowners in substantially African American neighborhoods. So basically every facet of home ownership or land ownership, they want to help Black people and African Americans with. Okay, let's move on to education and workforce development. Some other ideas that they have to help the Black community in Olympia. So first, of course, it starts with a blanket. City leadership and employees at all levels will increase awareness, knowledge, and shared commitment to anti-racism. They also want to explore providing additional mental health support for students of color. internship and mentorship programs with the goal of professional development and job placement for Black youth. Okay, hold regular implicit bias and racial equity training for school district faculty and staff. Recruit and retain more Black educators in the city and the county. Create awareness and understanding among all school staff of institutionalized racism and other biases that serve as barriers to achievements for students of color. All right, let's see. Increase on a yearly basis the number and percentage of skilled school staff who reflect the racial makeup of the student population, and invite speakers to address student bodies on racial justice and white privilege. That's what I want to hear, is you inviting speakers who you're probably going to pay during a time where we're supposed to believe schools are underfunded to come and talk to the student body about racial justice and white privilege. Cool. All right, we're not done yet with this long list of ideas. Economic empowerment and business development. So support Black-owned businesses, including with grants of up to $100,000 in multi-year funding. Offer personal tax reductions. Provide grants to Black-owned businesses. Establish a private fund for reparations. Provide direct cash payments to individuals harmed by racial discrimination. The city would establish a 90% guarantee fund for any kind of real estate loans. Establish a Black-owned bank within the city. It's not enough to just give them money. You got to have that money coming from a Black-owned bank. The city would also provide a guaranteed minimum income fund indexed to the cost of living for Black residents. So just wrap your mind around this. So they're not only talking about reparations, they're talking about cash payments for Black people from a Black-owned bank that they'll create, guaranteed minimum income. So that's just a UBI, right? Universal basic income, but only for Black residents, and even tax reductions and deductions for the color of your skin. You would get a tax break based on your skin pigmentation in the city of Olympia. Like, how are they going to do that? I always think of that old Peter Griffin Family Guy chart where it's like a chart of skin colors. Are they just going to hold it up next to you and be like, okay, yep, you're dark enough, you qualify for a tax deduction? It's wild stuff. Doesn't stop there. They also, of course, want to dive into viable criminal justice and social equity reparations. So they would provide assistance to residents for the expungement of cannabis charges, eliminate the cash bail and bond system by city ordinance, eliminate barriers to housing to allow justice-involved persons with criminal convictions to apply for and retain housing, included but not limited to public housing, the elimination of traffic stops based solely on equipment infractions by the police department and sheriff's office, community-based review board with subpoena power to examine misconduct among officers. Yeah, that will go over well, having a community-based board that has subpoena power to investigate what it deems to be violations of civil rights by law enforcement. I'm sure that wouldn't be weaponized for political purposes. And then also they're looking at the healthcare realm as a part of overall well-being in their reparations program. So there would be a healthcare subsidy for Black people. So basically in the city of Olympia, whether it's business, whether it's residential, whether it's just giving you money, whether it's helping out with your health care, the city of Olympia wants to wrap its arms around Black residents, not you white resident, get out of here, wrap its arms around its Black residents and help them in every facet of life. So thank you for thinking that was funny, Nicole. I appreciate that. That was good. Nicole's the only one who laughs at me. You have to laugh so you don't cry. Mm-hmm. So this is all kind of par for the course for Olympia, right? All these ideas are sort of crazy. It's being spearheaded in part by the city's mayor, who's Black. His name is Dante Payne, and he spoke with King 5 News about the importance of them looking at all of these things.
I do feel a sense of obligation to say something and weigh in and take action on this issue. The way I see this is we're planting seeds. So this is long-term work that I see as it's not all going to get done in my time as mayor. It's a conversation that Black Americans have been having for centuries at this point. It all started with 40 acres and a mule that was never provided to help build that intergenerational wealth for Black Americans.
Planting seeds of racism is what they're trying to do. You know, I was thinking about this morning, actually. I don't know why it popped into my mind, maybe because I knew we were going to talk about this on the show today. This is the first time where I've ever really been concerned in my lifetime about racial tensions in this country. In the sense that, because I feel like everything that's happening is leading to these deep divisions that really didn't exist to this extent before. I mean, there's always been racism, of course, and I'm not going to act like this country doesn't have a very troubling history when it comes to racism for a long time. So I've never acted like those things aren't a problem. But I felt like in my lifetime, things were going in the right direction. Everything was going in the right direction where people loved each other. You didn't give a whole lot of thought to race or, racial tensions or anything like that. And now it's like, wow, they really are trying to make I feel like they're trying to make white people hate black people. I feel like they're trying to make white people, what's the word I'm looking for? Resent black people. And so it's almost like they want, I mean, you guys, it's racism in the opposite sense. So they're kind of bringing us back. What they want is punishment, right? What they want is retribution. But they want it against people who are no longer alive, who did all these horrible things to black people in this country. And so they want this retribution that they can never really get for the wrongs of this country. And so now they want to just punish you and punish me and punish people who, have never owned a slave, who never engaged in discriminatory practices in any form or fashion. So it's just wild. So I feel like they want there to be racial division. So the fact that our country was heading towards this better place where racial divisions weren't as pronounced was bothersome to them, because they want there to be racial division, this us versus them. It's very strange. So anyway, all of this in the city of Olympia, we're used to crazy out of the city of Olympia. But the reason I wanted to start the show with it today is there was a guy who found himself on the commission reviewing all these policies. His name is Jeremy Ruse. And and I'll let him explain it in a moment. He's joining us. But he basically wanted to get involved in what was happening in his city. He's an Olympia resident. He's a business owner. He wanted to be part of the conversation and maybe trying to steer Olympia back to a place of sanity. And so he found himself on the Social Justice and Equity Commission. What's really interesting is it was the Social Justice and Equity Commission that ended up getting presented with like a $44,000 research study to look into all these possible options for how to improve the lives of black people in the city of Olympia. And what Jeremy found out really quickly is that they didn't really want to have a debate about this. They didn't really want to discuss the merits of any of the ideas that were put forth. They just wanted everyone on the commission to shut their mouths, to sign off on it, and to say, this is a really, really good thing. Well, Jeremy Ruse is not the kind of guy to shut his mouth and simply sign off on something. And so he expressed some concern. As you might guess, his concerns were not met by positivity. So Jeremy was nice enough to join us on the show today to talk about his experience being part of this commission for racial equity, and also his experience amongst the commission pushing back against some of these ideas. Jeremy, welcome to unDivided.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so how'd you end up on this commission?
So in the fall, the city of Olympia had sent out a flyer or an email discussing the different commissions that were available. I was pretty adamant about wanting to get involved in the city more, and the Social Justice and Equity Commission was one that was available, so I applied. And then in March, I interviewed, and March 13th, I believe, I was asked to be as part of the commission.
Gotcha. And I don't know really anything about your politics other than you're willing to speak out about this issue. So were you, frankly, whenever I see the word equity or anything or social justice, I'm always worried about what the government's going to do with that. Did you have any misgivings about the title of the commission?
So a little bit. So we have a mixed family. We have a pretty ethnically diverse family. And honestly, when I first joined the commission, I wasn't sure what to expect. But I am a little more conservative than maybe some of the other people on the commission, and I wanted to bring that to the meetings. I wanted to bring a different perspective, so that's really why I was excited to join.
Yeah. Sorry, this is an inartful question, but I think it's relevant. Mixed race family. What races are we talking about?
So I come from a Hispanic background,
Okay.
and then my wife is mixed Black and Italian.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. Well, that makes sense. And I think it's relevant again to the conversation we're going to have. So you joined this commission. You want to bring this perspective into it. We've seen some of the things that the commission is now considering in the way of reparations and other things. When they started talking about some of this stuff, like the reparations, how did that strike you?
So we were given a really short timeline. The first onboarding meeting that we had was April 21st, and then April 28th, I believe, was when the reparations meeting was scheduled. My initial reaction was, I had reservations, but I wanted to look through the packet of information that they provided and see what the intent was. And then after reading the paperwork, I mean, it wasn't consistent with what I believed was in the best interest of the city. So I went into the meeting knowing that I was probably going to be the odd man out, if you will.
Yeah. So Nicole had a conversation with you before this interview, and she explained to me a little bit of what happened that I want you to talk to our viewers and listeners about. So you were presented with a packet of information. My understanding, this is like what, research or a study or information done on whether these policies would be beneficial?
So what the city did is the city contracted a third party.
Okay.
They did a 30-day study on different cities across the country and what the recommendation would be for reparation policies and how to implement them, what they felt was the best practice to be able to use the reparations. Now, it was very clearly stated that it was not intended to discuss whether or not they were relevant or whether or not or how to finance them, but it was absolutely, it was about 100 pages long. And like I said, it was intended to discuss things like assisted business ownership or home ownership or, property acquirement, things of that nature.
Yeah, and so you're presented with all this information, relatively short timeline, and my understanding is you're basically told, we want to know what you like, not what you don't like.
So it was very clearly stated at the beginning of the paperwork. It said to only focus on the areas that were highlighted within the study, and then also to bring positive engagement, the things that you felt were you felt like were the best interest of the reparations. And that's where it really became a problem with me. I mean, I felt like that was kind of condescending. I'm of the opinion that if you're going to engage the community, you should hear the good and the bad, because I don't think that I don't think that this is in the best interest of the people of the city of Olympia. But like I said, I thought it was really guiding, and I didn't feel like that was the best approach in my opinion. Plus, we only had a 2-hour window to discuss this, so I felt like decisions had already been made. So I kind of addressed that in our meeting.
So it sort of seems like they didn't really want your opinion on it. They just wanted your sign off.
It was my opinion that that's all they were looking for. I absolutely believe that. I mean, given the scope of the work and given the nature of the circumstance, I mean, it's a pretty big conversation, and I don't think it's something that happens. Especially there were, I believe at the time we had combined Zoom and in person, probably 10 or 11 people. That's a really short window. I mean, honestly, I felt like they put it in front of the commission so that they could say that they did.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you decide to say something about it. Brave man. What do you say, and to whom, and how was it received?
So they had broken us up into groups, and we discussed it. And the guy that I was in a group with, I told him that I didn't have support for it. And I mean, we had a good conversation about it. He was fantastic. But when it came to me, I just presented the fact that I did not feel like this was relevant for the city. I feel like the city has bigger priorities. I felt like this was bigger than the city of Olympia, and not in a I wasn't trying to be derogatory, but I stated that I believe that this is a political move. I think that it is a topic that is very easy to get behind because it's very volatile, and I felt like I said, I just didn't feel like it was representative of the community. And I told the mayor that I felt like this was, with the intent of getting votes. I mean, it's something that will bring media attention if it's perpetuated, and it's something that, will perpetuate his political career if he chooses to stand on this. And I do believe that that's the case. And he wasn't very receptive to that.
What do you mean by wasn't very receptive?
So after we were taking turns going around the room, and I was the last one, and he came after me. And he told me that he was offended. He was offended by my statements. He said that as the first Black mayor of Olympia, he felt like that he was entitled, and I believe that was the word, don't hold me to that, but that this was a priority of his that meant a lot to him. And I don't necessarily agree with that. We had some conversation back and forth. At some point, he had stated that I said something and I didn't, and I didn't appreciate that. And that's where it really kind of degraded the conversation, because I told him very clearly, even someone else in the room stated that I had never said that, but he was insinuating I had no right to be to make remarks or make decisions about reparations, which I thought was odd, because at the end of the day, that's why we were invited into that room, was to give our opinions. And the opinion was contrary to his, so therefore he didn't like it. I mean, he just did not like it at all. And I have since reached out to him. I sent him an email to try to, kind of mend the bridge. I do have intentions of staying on this commission, and I want to have a positive impact on it, but I have not heard back from him. So I don't know if he didn't receive it. You never know with email. It's kind of tough. I'm sure he's a busy man. So
yeah. So when you say, he was accusing you of saying things that you didn't say, or that you didn't, twisting your words, was he suggesting you were being racist, or?
That was kind of the difficult part of walking away from that conversation. Like I said, he said that I had no right to make a decision about reparations, and I'll be candid, my emotions got a little involved. I try to really, control that, but I don't ever like having somebody put words into my mouth. But I had pointed out earlier in the conversation that I believe that there are deeper seated issues that have to be addressed, and I wasn't the only one. One of the other commissioners had made a comment that one of the things that they're proposing is to give away parcels of property. And one of the other commissioners had stated that if they're going to do that, there needs to be a certain stipulation that goes along with that to educate people on how to manage it and how to be successful with it. And I stated very similar points, but from a different perspective. I've had a significant interaction with people of culture in my world. So, I've seen the good things and I've seen some bad things. And I pointed out, if we don't cure the root problems, where does the value lie? I also stated that I do not believe that this is a local issue. And he himself had even commented on the fact that the federal government owed descendants of slavery reparations. And that really contradicted his point of trying to implement it at the city level. Yeah. I didn't call him on that because, like I said, we had gotten the conversation had kind of degraded to that point. But I would tend to agree with him on that. I mean, I don't think that this is a local conversation. And like I said, a lot of the talking points that I brought up, he just didn't. He was very aggressive about contradicting them. So
yeah. So I guess, what did you learn from this experience? I mean, you're an Olympia resident. You're a business owner. You have raised, have you had 3 kids go through Olympia School District?
So I have 3 that are 3 adult children and one in the getting ready to go into the 6th grade.
Yeah. So you're, a part of the community. You wanted to be part of these conversations and joined this commission. And I guess to have your thoughts and viewpoints received in that way, how frustrating is that?
I'm 52. I've been around. So, I mean, I didn't have my feelings hurt so much, I would tell you that a lot of the things that I believe you hear that are hyperbole or that people, put out there, they were verified in this. I mean, I was really disappointed in the fact that if I was in his shoes, I would not have become defensive. I would have had an open conversation. I would have maybe explained my points a little bit better. Maybe tried to, encourage that conversation so that I would have a better understanding as a constituent of what he was trying to accomplish. And the fact that he never did that was really unfortunate. I think the part that really bothers me is there was a post that was put out by one of our local individuals who very publicized, and he was commenting on how inclusive Mayor Payne was. This was after I had this meeting, and how, Mayor Payne had given a speech about how, he wants to work with both sides and he wants to hear the arguments and he wants to hear the conversations. And he absolutely did not in that night, and I'm not going to say that he wasn't having a bad night, or you never know what the circumstances are, but I did not have that. I had the exact opposite of that. And that is really disappointing. And I mean, I know that, people are busy. It's really easy to not be involved or understand what's going on in your local politics. But when you have an interaction like that, it really reinforces a negative, stigma. I mean, he didn't want to hear anything. And that's really unfortunate. And I mean, the fact that I reached out to him and he didn't reply, it just really, it makes me, to be honest with you, it motivates me even more to get more involved. And that's difficult to do for a lot of people. So myself included, everybody's busy, but it definitely lights a fire.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You must be a glutton for punishment because now you're running for the Olympia School Board.
I am.
That's
Absolutely.
the belly of the beast.
Yeah. And I mean, that's okay though.
Crazy. You're crazy.
I told a shared friend of ours convinced me that this was a really good idea. And since I've started running, I don't second guess it. It's a challenge, but I'm one of those people that I love a challenge. I really do. I've always been, we've been successful as a family because we'll put the work in, and I'm willing to do that now. I really am. The school board needs some direction, and it won't happen overnight. But if we can get the right people in place, I keep telling everybody we have 13 years to educate our children. We can't let politics and ideology drive that because. It changes overnight depending on, which way the wind blows, ideologies will change. We have to maintain consistency. And unfortunately, not excessive, but we had an unfortunate circumstance with our daughter in the 4th grade with a teacher. And luckily we're active parents. So we got involved and we shut it down pretty quick, but there's no place for that. I mean, kids need consistent education. We need to have thoughtful policy. We need to make sure that we're taking care of them. And right now, I don't feel like that's the case. So, I mean, I'm passionate about it and I believe in it.
Well, good for you. Good for you. I mean, and again, as a business owner, I mean, you making the time to get involved and do these things. I wish more people would do it. I understand why they don't. You do have to be a little crazy, which I don't know you,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I'm going to assume you're a little, but good for you for doing it because, again, I think Olympia is ground zero for a lot of these really misguided policies and ideologically driven decisions. And so if you can be a part of fixing that, by all means, sir. So appreciate
Absolutely.
you doing that
Absolutely.
and joining us.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So that's Jeremy Ruse, the poor citizen who just wanted to get involved in helping his community, ended up on the Social Justice and Equity Commission and was basically told since he's not black, he should sit there, shut his mouth and just accept all their ideas around racist reparations. So we appreciate him, again, going into the belly of the beast, now running for school board and sharing with us his experience behind the scenes as a white presenting man. Because he's part Hispanic, right? Looks white. White presenting man. Who was on an equity commission and didn't go very well. Shock that his ideas weren't readily accepted or listened to. All right, speaking of nonsense in the state of Washington, so the city of Spokane, which it's so interesting. It's such an enigma to me because, of course, it's drilled into our head that this side of the state, west side of the state, super liberal, east side of the state, very conservative. But of course, Spokane, which, is a big city, has been getting more and more blue as the years have gone by. And so it's this sort of blue, becoming a blue stronghold, I would say, on the other side of the state. And their policies show it. So they now want to ban, if I'm understanding this correctly, immigration agents from entering public parks. Got it. This is from the Center Square. Spokane considers banning ICE agents from parks despite the park board's opposition. It says Spokane City Council is considering an ordinance to ban federal law enforcement from entering certain areas without a warrant. Councilmember Lily Navarte proposed the idea Monday. She wants to provide a refuge for others as the agency makes headlines over its activity in Spokane. It says, if approved, the ordinance would allow the Spokane Park Board to temporarily or permanently designate city parks as non-public areas due to residential safety concerns. That means agents wouldn't be allowed to enter without written permission unless they have a warrant. According to emails obtained by the Center Square, the Parks Board doesn't support the policy or taking an enforcement role. So the Parks Board doesn't even want to do this, according to these internal emails. They're not interested in doing it, and I understand why. So now they have to be the ones to enforce it. And if you designate a public park a non-public area, does everyone else have to have written permission to enter? Would anyone entering the park then be trespassing? Or is it only ICE agents who all of a sudden have to present written permission to go into a park and perform an arrest? Would city police be able to go into the park and perform an arrest? What if somebody is in there, JOing like they do in so many parks? The homeless people go there and pleasure themselves. Like, do police need to have a warrant too? It's obviously such a dumb idea, and it's so ideologically driven. And look, I know they always go to what's the worst case scenario, and this was the subject of our daily subscriber show poll, so we'll get to your answers on this in a moment. If you're a subscriber on Patreon, Locals, or X, and you haven't taken our poll yet, please make time to do that before we get to comments for the day, because I asked if you're okay with it. Because I can see, for instance, Like, do I want ICE agents swarming a little kiddie playground and ripping someone's parent away while the kid's on the monkey bars? Not, well, depends what the parent did, I guess. I mean, police have probably done that, but because it's an immigration enforcement effort, you don't want them to do that. So I don't know. What happens if the city of Spokane does this and then the park board doesn't want to enforce it? So now it's just a feel-good policy that's put forth for no reason, that has no teeth whatsoever. So very curious what you guys think about this. I mean, obviously the idea of designating a public place as a non-public place, I think you get into some legal gray area. I'm not even sure if you can do that, or if the park board doesn't want to enforce it, whether it would actually be meaningful. But I'm curious whether you guys have any sort of qualms with ICE operating in a park.
I just picture it as like a line. So then you're running and you just like run towards the park and then step 1 foot over, and then the cops can't, or ICE can't touch you or whatever.
Can't come in here. Like, so now we're going to make parks where kids play sanctuaries for criminals. That's the idea here. Just another example of these backwards policies where they're going out of their way, above and beyond, to protect criminals, regardless of what the consequences might be for the innocent and the law-abiding. So we'll have your thoughts on that coming up at our daily subscriber show poll. The best thing happened to me yesterday. I got the best compliment I've ever received. I got accused of being on Ozempic yesterday. I posted, Nicole took new headshots for me because my hair has gotten so long, and I've lost weight. My whole old headshots don't look anything like me anymore. And you did a very good job, thank you. But I posted one, and someone on X accused me of being on Ozempic. And I was like, gonna cry. I was like, that is, you telling me I've lost so much weight, you think I'm on Ozempic? Thank you. That's not Ozempic. It's Eastside Weight Loss Clinic. I've lost now 43 pounds on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program. And I've done most of that through maintenance. So I did 60 days of hard work, lost an initial 30 pounds, ended up losing an additional 10 pounds. And then I just sort of let that new weight sit for a little bit. And then this year I was like, I think I want to lose a little bit more. So I've been kind of revisiting some of the skills I learned on the Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program. And that's the nice thing about it, is it's something you can continue to go back throughout your life, because it's not, drugs or injections or prepackaged meals. It's just real food. And they teach you what you need to know about the right kind of food to eat in the right portions, how to jumpstart your metabolism. So like, for instance, when I got back from Cabo for a week, where I ate way too many tacos. Actually, not too many. The perfect amount of tacos. I got back, I was like, I got to go back on my Eastside Weight Loss Clinic program here actively for a couple weeks, just to negate what I just did to my body in Cabo with all the drinks and stuff. So, so do what I did. Check out Eastside Weight Loss Clinic, and in a few months, someone might accuse you too of being on Ozempic, which is a lot of fun and a great compliment. EastsideWeightLossClinic.com, EastsideWeightLossClinic.com. Schedule your free 15-minute consultation with Dr. Ryan Coogan and his team today. All right, when I think of a good religious university, you know what I think of? Queer prom and HIV testing for 14-year-olds. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Okay. I'm just reading funny comments. You guys are funny today. I have comments I've marked because you guys are hilarious. All right. Pacific Lutheran University will be holding a queer prom, or did hold a queer prom, I should note, this past Saturday on May 10th. Queer prom, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. Here's how it was advertised. What's with the horses, Nicole? Is that PLU's logo?
No, I think that was part of the theme for prom.
I thought it was a queer prom. Isn't that the theme?
No, that's just who's invited. Okay. So the horse.
Are the horses queer?
Yeah. So read that first bullet point. It explains the horses.
Okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Let me just read the whole thing. Nicole's like, just read and you'll answer your own question. Queer prom is an annual opportunity for LGBTQ plus and allied youth ages 14 to 24 to come experience queer joy. What's queer joy? And engage with community resources. The event is hosted by Oasis in partnership with PLU and is open to PLU students and community members. This year's theme is Detective Dance, the case of the horse heist. A detective whodunit. A horse has been stolen, and it's up to you to solve the mystery for raffle ticket. Okay, so a horse has been stolen. So the horses aren't queer horses. They're Just horses. Okay, gotcha.
Lost horses.
Had nothing to do with queer. Along with exciting prizes, we will be having some wonderful resources available at Prom. It's a drug and alcohol-free event, and there's free HIV testing available. Okay, I have a lot of things to say about this. First of all, ages 14 to 24.
Creepy.
Why are you hosting a prom-style event where I assume there'd be some sort of mingle dancing sort of with 24-year-olds and 14-year-olds? That's ultra creepy. That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
I mean, even really anyone 18 over at a prom event with 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds?
I guess
that's creepy stuff. Why are you doing that?
Well, I guess this group that they're part of encourages adult mentors for queer students.
Okay, we'll get to the Oasis.
But again, problematic.
Well, especially when
and feels like grooming.
You're having feels like grooming. You're having resources, and your second bullet point on what's happening at the event is free HIV testing. Gotcha. So that tells me that some of the resources are going to be about sex, safe sex, sex in general. And given everything we know about what kind of resources there are at events like this, it deeply concerns me that 14-year-olds were allowed to attend. Like, look, I'm all for safe sex. Hell, I'm all for HIV testing. I don't know if I'm for
14 is
hosting.
Young.
It's so young. It's so young. Hosting an event with 14 to 24-year-olds that's about queer joy, and then one of the primary things you say they can do there is get HIV testing done.
I mean,
and it's a Lutheran university.
Yeah, I'm very confused by that, especially. But I also think, I mean, even in high school, prom is just for seniors and juniors because
unless you're invited by
another, right?
Yes.
And typically it's within an age range because it's illegal. If you have 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds dating 14, 15, 16-year-olds, like that's a problem. And so I don't understand, like this is you're encouraged to come and dance, which is a fairly intimate act in times. And especially like, that's what you think of when you go to a prom is you're going to dance, slow dance, whatever. I don't know what they do at prom these days.
Think of it outside. Yeah. Take the queer thing out of it.
Right.
Take the gay thing out of it.
Yeah.
If they allowed 24-year-olds up to 24 to come to your kid's high school prom, how would you feel about that?
Right.
How would you feel about that? So 14 is that a 8th grader or is that a 9th grader? I mean, 14 is like super young.
It could be an 8th grader, probably could be a 7th grader.
So imagine this. At your kid's senior prom, they allow 14-year-olds to 24-year-olds. Would you let your kid go? No parent in the world would do that.
No.
Like, no, I'm sorry, Susie. There's going to be 20, and what 24-year-olds are coming to that?
Right.
Only the creepers, right?
Well, it's at a university, so that's the creepy thing too, because what are college students still wanting to go to a prom for?
Right.
With a bunch of 14-year-olds.
With a bunch of kids. Mm-hmm. Why are they inviting the kids? Nicole, why did they invite the kids?
It's a kid activity. Like if you're in high school, like if you're
HIV testing isn't a kid activity.
No, that's not. I mean, prom, when you think of prom, you're like, well, high school teen activity. But then you're having it at a college. So you're inviting college students now who are in their 20s to come to this. Like it's all sorts of wrong.
With kids and get tested for HIV.
Grooming.
What is going on? So just a little bit about this group that co-hosted it with PLU. It's called Oasis Youth Center, where queer youth thrive. It says it's the only LGBTQ plus youth organization in Pierce County. Mission is to transform the lives of queer and questioning youth by creating a safe place to learn, connect, and thrive. Vision, Oasis envisions a world in which queer youth are valued in the community as strong, creative leaders. And again, I think that it has this, it's pushing this idea that they're not. That they're not. No, we live in one of the most progressive places on earth. And really, up until a few years ago, I don't think anybody gave a second thought to who they were surrounded by and what their sexuality was. And we just didn't care. And now you're forcing us to not only care, but accept like every single thing anybody wants to do in their life, even if it's totally outrageous or biologically a fallacy. And now it bothers us. Now I'm bothered by it. And then it says youth adult partnership, youth and adults coming together for shared learning, teaching, and action.
See,
so
that bothers me because you're going to call it a youth center. So you're encouraging youth. And so if you go to your parents and say, hey, I want to go to the youth center, they'd be like, yeah, like that makes sense. Those are people your age going to a center to hang out or whatever. You might not know it's LGBTQ, but whatever. I mean, you say, I'm going to a youth center. That seems like a good idea, right? That's some place that is probably your people. But then you add in this adult, like you're emphasizing that it's a youth adult partnership.
Right.
So why are you calling it a youth center if you're focusing on connecting these youth with adults?
Well, here's the thing though. In any other context, I'm fine with that. Like, let's say, well, because there's mentorships, right?
You would call it that, a mentorship.
But mentorships are fine. Like having a mentorship, like maybe you have, for future business leaders. Like that's not weird, right? Having youth go in and be mentored by adult business owners. This is only about sexuality. That's the thing. LGBTQ plus IA, whatever. It's about who you prefer to have sex with. It's about who you're sexually attracted to. That's why it's so weird that it's woven throughout every aspect of public life. Because at its core, that's all it's about, is people who have differing opinions about who they are sexually attracted to and want to have sex with. So what exactly is the kind of mentoring that takes place when the group of people, their commonality is about who they choose to have sex with, and it being different from societal norms, mostly, right? So that's what's weird about it. And then you throw in HIV testing for 14-year-olds and have them at a prom with 24-year-olds, and now I think the worst of you. And also, Pacific Lutheran University. I'm not saying there aren't gay people who are religious, and that religious institutions should totally shut out gay people. I don't believe that at all. But just the whole vibe of the event does not seem like an event that should be held at a religious institution. It's very strange. You know what it is?
It's so strange.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. All right, coming up next. Wow, gosh, really weird. A major U.S. city is rolling back its rent control policy. Why? Because it doesn't work, and it ends up being bad for people and bad for cities. Real. I wish somebody had warned them, right, that it was a bad idea. We'll talk about that coming up next. First, our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com should be your first call if you're thinking about selling your home. Wes has been doing this for a really long time in our area. He's been through the market ups and downs, and he knows what it takes to make sure that you get top dollar for your home. And his attention to detail, his customer service, his communication, all top notch. I get so much great feedback about Wes from unDivided viewers and listeners. So the first thing that he's going to do when you reach out to him is give you a free market analysis. So you can understand how well your home is positioned, what you might be able to expect to get from your home in the market that we're in, and depending on how homes around you are doing. And then he's going to come in, he's going to look over your home top to bottom, and he's going to make some suggestions. Hey, here's what I think needs to be done to your home before it hits the market, and here's how we can go about doing that. He can totally handle it for you if you want. He can call in the contractors. He can manage the contractors. You don't even have to pay for the upgrades until closing. But these are going to be things that Wes thinks are necessary to get top dollar for your home, things that are going to pay off in the closing price of your home. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It is simply a better way to sell your home. All right, we got to take you to St. Paul, Minnesota. As you know, Washington State just passed statewide rent control, which will be disastrous. There's no question, because it's always been disastrous, and that is no exception in St. Paul. So St. Paul had a pretty extreme rent control policy. This is from the Minnesota Reformer. There's something about this photo I have to point out in a second, but their rent control was, cap was 3%, which is kind of crazy. Capping, I mean, sometimes that's not even within inflationary realms. So 3% was their cap. So that didn't work out very well, because what happened? What happened, guys? People stopped building there. Builders didn't want to come in and build new units. And so then, of course, there's shortage of rental housing. So one of the many things that is obviously going to happen in Washington State. So St. Paul decided, and they voted to walk it back a little bit. So now if your unit that you rent out was built after 2004 in St. Paul, you're no longer subjected to the rent control, which is interesting. And I don't even think that's legal. I think they'll face some challenges over that, because how can you say this rental unit is rent controlled and this isn't? I mean, I know it happens elsewhere, but just based on the date it was built. So that's sort of strange, but it's because it doesn't work. And St. Paul, I'm from Minnesota. That's a very, very liberal place. And they were, of course, met with these protesters. I have to say, can you pull that back up for people watching? In the way back, there's the woman, or there's a person with a mask on. Okay, that gives you the hint. There's a lot of people in that crowd with COVID masks on, that says people over profit. And we hear that so much, right, from the far left. Whatever, if they're protesting Amazon, people over profit, people over profit. So you're just saying, right, that you don't expect landlords to make a profit? Is that actually what they want? Do they just not want landlords to make a profit? So it's charitable? Is that what they want? They want them to lose money? They want them to do it for free? Nobody's going to be a landlord if they can't make a little bit of money. They're not making money, some of these landlords, hand over fist, maybe the big conglomerate ones. But like, so you're saying maybe an old lady who bought a rental unit as a retirement income, that she needs to put people over profit and not profit from it? You realize that's ridiculous, right? So anyway, there's no reason why what happens everywhere else that institutes rent control is not going to happen here. People are going to build less. And so our housing crisis is going to get even worse. And then in Washington state, the cap is now 7%. And so what renters are going to see is an annual just cut and paste 7% increase, 7% increase, 7% increase from landlords. And you guys know this by now. We've talked about it a lot. So given that Bob Ferguson has now signed rent control, we've talked almost every week with Sean Flynn of the Rental Housing Association of Washington, which represents landlords, about this issue. And he and I were both holding out hope that Bob Ferguson would veto it, only to come to find out that Bob Ferguson supported it all along. So I asked Sean Flynn about that revelation. Sean Flynn, welcome back to Undivided.
Hey, thanks for having me.
When I'm right, I'm right. Bob Ferguson didn't have the cojones to do what's right. I knew it.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but Brandi, you were correct in the great Brandi-Sean debate of whether Bob Ferguson would have the courage to veto the bill. I wanted to believe. I'll admit, I believed him when he said he wanted to build 200,000 net units in his first term, and I just... you were correct. He did. In the end, he caved to the far left, and maybe he was always far left to begin with. Not only do I hate losing the debate to you, but it's deeply disappointing for the industry.
Yeah, and we'll talk about obviously the impacts and the concerns sort of moving forward. But what was it like for you to read that, according to Democratic lawmakers, that Bob Ferguson has supported the idea of rent control the whole session? So while we're on sort of wishful thinking, he actually had already told them in the second week of the session that he supported rent control.
Yeah, that article was tough for the industry and tough for us here at RHA. He looked like he was going to govern the way he ran, which was as a moderate. And when the rubber met the road and behind the scenes, he was saying, no, I'm with the ultra progressives supporting policies that have never worked anywhere. You're already seeing folks getting rent increases that they would not have otherwise got. This thing will be a slow motion train wreck.
Talking about the immediate reaction, I mean, I've even seen on my channels, and we have commenters who watch the live show who have said, that's it, I'm selling my rental units, and had sort of been thinking about it anyway because of all the other anti-landlord policies. So I'm assuming you've heard a lot of that as well.
Oh yeah, the request for the 90-day notice for to sell the property form has gone up dramatically in my office. But at the same time, we're seeing a lot of folks join the Rental Housing Association because they're realizing that in order to survive this regulatory environment, that they need help from an org like RHA. So while some folks are leaving the industry and thus the org, we also have a large influx of folks who realize that they can no longer go it alone with the government that's currently in power in the state of Washington, who clearly views them as an enemy.
Yeah, as we've said repeatedly, I mean, rent control's never worked anywhere. It's always been disastrous. And I don't know if you saw this headline out of Minneapolis this week. St. Paul. They've walked back rent control to a certain extent. So they've now said, okay, that didn't work very well. So now all properties built after 2004 are exempt from their rent control policy there. And it just shows you, I mean, it has negative consequences. How long do you think it will be before in Washington state that becomes very apparent that it's a failed policy?
Well, I mean, I think it's apparent that it's a failed policy now, even in the fact that it's passed not that long ago, and already we're seeing the inverse reaction. The question isn't how long it takes for it to be shown as a failed policy. It's how long do policymakers take to accept the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm not optimistic about that because the majority party is, often touted as the party that follows the science, and yet it will not follow economic science on this topic. We all know that this policy leads to rents going up, not down. And so when that happens, I have deep concerns that the ultra progressives will say, oh, look, it's just not working. We need to move the cap lower.
Yeah. You mentioned it there, but I think probably we've been doing these segments with you guys, gosh, for I don't know, a year or so now. And I think it's more important than ever that landlords who are trying to go at their own get with RHA and be part of a group on this as you guys try to push back. So if there's a landlord very concerned and they're not a member of RHA, what can you help them with if they become a member?
Oh, RHA's got a massive form library to keep you up to date on all of the required forms you need to be giving your tenant, both at lease signing and throughout the lease. And those are getting more and more every day. In fact, this bill itself has special magic language you have to use at lease renewal. RHA already has a form for that for our members. We host a spring workshop every year, and this year we're doing 3 of them around the state to keep people educated on the changes and how to best operate their rental business. And then we also have an Engage seminar in the fall. It's a 2-day event this year. In fact, I think you spoke at the last one, and yep. I believe you'll be speaking at the next one. Even before this bill passed, it's crazy to attempt to navigate rental housing in the state of Washington without the Rental Housing Association. You are just waiting to fall into the many traps that our policymakers have built for you. And when you fall in those traps, it is very expensive to get out. So please join the org and let us help you avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah. And we appreciate the work you guys are doing behind the scenes and publicly. And next time, you'll just listen to me when I tell you Bob Ferguson's hopeless, completely hopeless.
Yeah. I know. I hate to admit it. I really had faith. I hope that he finds some courage in other places, but I'm not hopeful at this point.
The only positive that comes out of this is I don't have to go to church now. Remember, I promised I would attend church one time if Bob Ferguson vetoed rent control. Well, I guess
that's a positive,
if he really wanted me to, if the big guy really wanted me to attend church, he would have worked through Bob Ferguson to veto rent control. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'll go at some point. Hard to understate how disastrous rent control is going to be. And it might be a couple years before people fully realize it. And the question is, as Sean pointed out, will the far left progressives admit they were wrong? Probably not. I don't see them admit they were wrong often, including down in California. Governor Gavin Newsom must think voters in California are the stupidest people on the face of the earth. We'll discuss. First, our friend Zach Abraham, coming up next Thursday, is having another one of his Know Your Risk live webinars. So if you're worried about tariffs, the economy, if you're watching too much MSNBC and you're all freaked out, this is probably a good webinar for you. Totally free. You can passively listen in. It's happening next Thursday, May 22nd, 3:30 p.m. So Zach Abraham and his team are going to cover how the market's reacting to the recent tariff news and the China semi-deal that they reached, how it could impact your retirement portfolio, a longer-term outlook for 2025, and they'll do a full reveal of how Bulwark is always looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible, which is what all of us want. So sign up for Zach's free webinar, Tariff Edition, Thursday, May 22nd. Register now at knowyourriskradio.com. Again, that's knowyourriskradio.com. Okay. I'm used to this by now. I guess elected leaders assuming that voters are so dumb that they won't remember things that happened a couple of years ago. Gavin Newsom is very clearly trying to run for president. I think that's obvious by now. And he's hoping that California voters and voters across the country are so stupid that they'll be convinced that he is the one who has helped fight homelessness in California. This is crazy to me. So Governor Newsom put out this post on X. After saying they needed resources and legal clarity to address homelessness and encampments, local governments have since received both. Now the state is providing a model to tackle encampments humanely while acting with the required urgency. The time for inaction is over. The literal governor of California is saying that the time for inaction on homelessness is over and that the state, under his guidance, is going to provide cities in California with the plan and tools they need to make it happen. This is the guy who's been the governor for 6 years. He was the lieutenant governor before he was the governor. And he was the mayor of San Francisco before all of that. And he wants you to believe that he's now the guy who's going to act with urgency to fix the homeless crisis that he helped to create every step of the way. Do people believe this? Do people believe this? I mean, maybe there are some people who are that dumb. But it shows what he thinks of voters, right? And probably what he knows to be true of the news media, that a lot of them will just glob onto this and give him credit for whatever cities accomplish in the next couple years. So they released this whole big long plan. Governor Newsom releases state model for cities and counties to immediately address encampments with urgency and dignity. It says this is from the state. What you need to know. So it says Governor Newsom today released a model ordinance to immediately address dangerous and unhealthy encampments and connect people experiencing homelessness with shelter and services. Again, the encampments that he has been perfectly fine with up to this point. There was a quote included in there that absolutely is making my blood boil. He said there's nothing compassionate about letting people die on the streets. The time for inaction is over. There are no more excuses. There's nothing compassionate about letting people die on the streets. No shit. There's been nothing compassionate about it for the last 6 years while you've been governor. And while people with common sense have been begging you to do something about it urgently, and all you did is make it worse. All you did is feed hundreds of millions of dollars annually into the homeless industrial complex just for them to piss it away and not actually make the problem any better, and to continue to allow people to die on the streets in filth and squalor, just like is happening in Oregon, just like is happening in Washington state. And now all of a sudden you're holding yourself up as this champion of the homeless who's going to finally help get them off the streets and out of these encampments and out of their addiction, and is going to give cities and counties the tools they need to get it done with haste? Do people believe this? And this is not the first thing that Gavin Newsom has tried to rewrite history on. That he's all of a sudden, what did he say on his stupid little podcast? It's not really fair for boys to compete against girls in sports. While California lets boys compete against girls in sports. So he's trying to take all these moderate positions because he's going to run for president. But it's really just offensive. And if I were a Californian, I would be so deeply offended by this notion that Gavin Newsom is going to come in and save the day. You look at the depths of despair in places like San Francisco. People dying daily on the streets, slumped over in their fentanyl haze. And all of a sudden, he's the guy who doesn't think there's anything compassionate about letting people die on the streets. It's disgusting. We saw the same thing here. Governor Inslee coming out and all of a sudden getting cameras around him while he tours homeless encampments to pimp his right-of-way initiative. Oh, we're finally 12 years into my time in office. We're doing something meaningful about the homeless encampments along our freeways. And then to come to find out that his sham of a right-of-way initiative program was only moving like one person out of homelessness for every $1 million they spent. Because it's all about optics and hoping the media will cover things in the most positive light, which they do. Because you're a Democrat, so you can get away with decades of failure as a Democrat. And the media gives you a free pass, and then you can come in and say you're the one who's going to fix the decades of failure that you caused. Good God, I do not believe that voters are dumb enough to elect Gavin Newsom president. I could be wrong. Voters have disappointed me in the past, but this is absolutely offensive and kind of sick, to be honest. He's let all these people die in filth and squalor. And now he says he's the one who's going to fix it. It's disgusting. All right, let's get to our subscriber poll, shall we? And then we'll come back to comments. All right, so I asked you guys, should ICE be allowed to carry out arrests in local public parks and playgrounds? This, of course, based on the news that Spokane, Washington wants to prohibit this. So I asked you on Patreon, locals, or X. I got to read Matt's comment because it was really funny. Matt Gilbert said, I think ICE should carry out enforcement actions only at local public parks and playgrounds. Of course, Matt. Very funny. Mm-hmm. Okay, Nicole, how do you feel about this? Should they be allowed to do this?
Oh, yeah. I don't think you can say, I mean, obviously, yeah, I don't know. They broke the law. I think then they're, yeah.
Any misgivings about it happening at a park where kids are playing?
I don't think that's a real thing. I don't think they're going and snatching up kids playing parents.
Yeah.
I don't think that the fear is there. I think that they're talking about, protecting maybe people experiencing homelessness or something like that, or doing drugs over in the corner. I don't know who they're that's who they protect first.
Don't you protect the community by getting criminal illegal aliens off the street?
You would think.
Isn't that ultimately a net good if your concern is safety, is community safety? Because they're saying this is a community safety issue. So we need to make these parks special places where ICE can't come. And that's in the interest of community safety. Is it though?
Right.
Is it in the interest of community safety? So
I hope they don't go up the slide and grab him on the top of the
come on down,
house.
kid.
But
they just come on
you can
down.
wait in the parking lot and on your way to the car.
Good grief. Peggy says she voted no because those areas would likely have the immigrants' children there too. Michelle, why not? Illegal in the U.S. means no sanctuary anywhere. Rick, so you'd have standoffs with ICE surrounding parks waiting for people to come out, probably requiring dozens, if not hundreds more ICE agents to execute. Plus then all the local police to handle the inevitable crowds and protesters that form who aren't allowed to coordinate with the ICE agents. Great idea. John Gray says, I voted yes with one caveat. They must have justification, not just a sweep of the park.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
I agree with that too. Let's see. Joel, illegals could be anywhere, so enforce it anywhere. And also, where do you stop if it's a public park?
Yeah.
So now you're saying, because a public park is a public place. So now you're saying now it's not a public place? So what else does that extend to? So I don't know. I just don't see how it's even legal. Let me see. Y said, I was going to say no, but I changed it to yes, as it is a public space and police agencies should be able to do their jobs in public spaces. Yeah, you would think.
While we're talking about it, there was in Yakima, I think yesterday, there was a dad shot in a public park in Yakima playing basketball with his kids. So if the shooter is illegal and they're standing in the basketball court, does that mean you couldn't go and arrest this guy?
Well, police would arrest that guy, right? So police would go in because there's an underlying crime.
But I'm just saying, if you're going to protect a space like that, I don't know.
They just run into parks.
Silliness.
They would just run into parks.
Right.
And hold up there. And they'll hold kids hostage in a park, right? Right. Be like, you're not coming in, and you got to let. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster. Right. Weiss Castle says yes. ICE, like any police, have to go where the offenders are. If local police have concerns, then work with them. Yeah, problem solved. Todd Welch, ICE needs to focus on criminal illegal immigrants. The average American wants drug dealers, violent offenders, and other criminal elements removed from our country. The administration will get voters' support by removing those who wish to victimize our citizens, not men and women who are just working. All right. Okay. Where am I going now? Oh, gotcha. We'll get to comments from our live stream and from Patreon locals coming up in a moment. First, I have told you guys over and over to take the First Mark Challenge. It really is a no-brainer. We all need insurance, so why not have someone do all the hard work for you? Make sure you have the coverage you need. Make sure you're getting it at the best possible price. That's what First Mark Insurance will help you do. And we call these First Mark Challenge victories. When people take the First Mark Challenge and they end up getting better insurance or a lower price. Our friend Brock Heward, a well-known radio personality and sports personality, also took the First Mark Challenge, and he talked to me a little bit about what he got out of the experience.
The word that comes to my mind is a word I use a lot on my sports show, and that is connective tissue. It's important in team building. It's important as players in a locker room to be connected to others. And when it comes to insurance, it's so complicated. It's so stressful. You just don't even want to deal with it. And that is where the connective tissue of having a pro, having a broker, having a partner, and most of all, having a teammate like First Mark Insurance, it was the best connective tissue we could find.
Yeah, so do what I did, do what Undivided did as a business, do what Brock did, and do what so many other undivided subscribers have done. Take the First Mark Challenge today. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. You just schedule a little time with them to go over your current insurance and your insurance needs. They go out, they shop the market for you, they come back with their recommendations. It is worth the investment of time because on the back end, you could save hundreds or thousands of dollars a year. Firstmarkinsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. All right, comments. Sergeant Pickles, when you are so woke, you forget to not be racist. Yeah, that kind of describes reparations. I'm so woke, I'm racist. Kim, just keep racism going. Unfreaking believable. Yeah, they want to make it worse. Wild. Robert Von Darth, if biology does not dictate identity, can I identify as black? Well, apparently that's too far, because Rachel Dolezal got canceled for identifying as black and becoming the head of the NAACP.
Although that was years ago. We've come a long way.
That's true. So if she did that now and she said, I identify as a black person, would she get away with it? But again, you can't change your gender no more than you could change the color of your skin. So why would it be acceptable to say all of a sudden, oh, I'm a woman and you have to treat me like a woman, than it would be for someone to say I'm black and you have to treat me like I'm black? Just wild. Matt, next they're going to make black only water fountains and diner counters. Yeah. Merwin Wren, about economic and workforce development, Jim Crow would be proud. That's all. We're just flipping things on their head. Krista, on it. And look, I like to believe that if I had been alive during the period of slavery or Jim Crow laws, I would have been on the right side of things. And I would have fought against discrimination. I mean, none of us can say that for sure that weren't there, but I like to think that I would have done that. But to like suggest that people who have no connection to that time frame have to pay the price for it because our skin is white is absolutely stupid. Krista, honest question. At what point do you as an African American get offended at your government for continually telling you that you cannot do it on your own? Yeah, like Dory used to always say, the soft bigotry of low expectations. Julie, pitting good people against each other is one of the oldest games in the book, creating the problem to offer the solution, which inevitably leads to more control. People of color are being used and allowing it. They're throwing us backward in several areas, and this is a pattern throughout history. Yeah, good comment. Kathleen, plenty of generations of white people who have not inherited family wealth. What about them? And thus the problem, right? White people who can't afford a place to live. And now all of a sudden they have to pay into a fund to give black first-time home buyers money for a down payment. It makes no sense, and it's illegal. Mark, this state's roots in the woke mind virus run deep. Yes. Sally, when will people realize handouts will not help anyone? It's total racism. I don't know. I think it will take people of color and black people pushing back and calling it what it is. It's offensive for you to believe that we can't succeed in business, we can't succeed in life, our kids can't succeed in school unless you give them a hand up while pushing other people down, because it is an offensive concept. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, if your family was discriminated against, if you are the descendant of slaves, if your family was prohibited from home ownership at some point in this country and you can prove that, I feel very differently about it. If the government did something to your family specifically that prevented you from building generational wealth, I feel like you have a case against the government. It's like you got to take it up with the government entity that did that to your ancestors. Anyway, all right. With that, let's get to our closing sanity check. All right, we talk often about TDS, how at once I too had TDS, and then I got over it before it was deadly. Jimmy Kimmel went on MSNBC for like an interview. I don't know, I guess he's a newsworthy guy these days. And he said that not only does he have TDS, but people should be proud of their TDS.
I'm an optimistic person. I'm not hysterical. I laugh when people say, oh, you've got Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
I think if you're a reasonable person, you should have Trump derangement syndrome. Right. And by the way, I think he has derangement syndrome about us, too. The fact of the matter is, this is a dangerous person. This is a stupid person. And that's a bad combination.
Yes, Donald Trump created a business empire, two-time president of the United States, is a stupid person, according to Jimmy Kimmel. Got it. Totally don't have TDS. That has been our sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We appreciate every single one of you. Oh, what else I got? New episode of Doge Watch out tonight. Another show tomorrow.
You want to talk about, are you on tell them about Sunday? Well, we can tell them more about Sunday tomorrow.
No, I'll talk
or Saturday
tomorrow.
Sorry.
No.
Okay.
I don't want to. It's too early in the week to talk
deal.
about our wonderful interview on Sunday.
No, not interview. Sorry. I was thinking activity. Saturday.
Oh, no. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Okay.
Not prepared yet. Really?
Ooh, big show tomorrow.
Put me on the spot, Nicole. Put me on the spot. Okay. Anyway. That's it, guys. I don't know. I try to fill this time with something interesting and quippy that I failed today. I failed. Okay, bye.